3 years ago today, Sudan was plunged into a civil war. A violent struggle for power erupted between the country's army and a powerful paramilitary group back in April of 2023. The leaders of the Sudan Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces, once allies, now engaged in a battle over control of Sudan. This has left civilians caught in the middle, experiencing the devastating consequences of the world's worst man-made humanitarian crisis. There is widespread sexual violence and famine, with millions displaced and in need of humanitarian aid. Now, for more on this, we're joined now by Walter Mwasaa, a regional director with the international aid organization CARE, which stands for the Cooperative for Assistance and Relief Everywhere. Walter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Miranda, and thank you for having me.
All right, so it's been extremely difficult to communicate with people in Sudan. There has been, as you know, media blackouts, a decline in the freedom of the press. What are you hearing from CARE's officials on the ground about what the current situation is in the country?
Thank you again. So after 3 years of war, we are now looking at about 30 million people that do not have access to food. That's about half of the population of the country. 10 million people are facing what we consider as severe hunger. And we have about only 1% of households being able to actually provide food, especially those that are led by women. The number of bombings and the structures, infrastructure, hospitals, clinics that have been affected are quite a number. We've lost about 80 of them that CARE itself has supported. We are also seeing a lot of farmers unable to access the food that they have grown, even in a time of war, when you'd expect them to thrive on what they can produce, even in these difficult times. Getting to the farm is a risk. Many times you get shot at when you're going to your farm to harvest the food. When you put it on the truck, on the road, there are checkpoints you have to pay to get through. People that are willing to buy cannot access the food. And many times a lot of households are going to bed hungry, unable to even provide a basic meal, even in a day for themselves.
Walter, how do you think it got to this point? And do you see any signs of the current situation improving at all?
Well, I think we must give credit to the communities because they've been able to continue to show resilience, which is the ability to provide for themselves in the difficult times. So this is not a normal crisis. It is 3 years of war. If we could get the warring factions to keep away from the farms, to keep away from the roads when people are transporting food, if we could get the warring parties to allow communities to have their life, and most important, if we can get the international community to actually bring this war to an end, we think it is possible, it is doable, and it takes political willpower from the powers that are at war and those that have influence and sway over them.
Well, I want to talk about that, Walter, because it does seem like the international community is failing Sudan at this moment. Who needs to step up and help here and support Sudan? Do you think is it the UN, the United Nations? And if so, why do you think it's taken so long for it to truly intervene?
I think it's important to acknowledge that in any war, there are many different factors. And from an international organization's perspective, what we are looking at is first guaranteeing access to basic services to the communities. It is important that we first make sure that the warring parties respect international humanitarian law, keep off from the farms, keep off from the roads, keep off from bombing the clinics that people that are hurt are able to go to. So I think there's a moral obligation here. And yes, there's a UN and other global forces that are at play. And we believe that talking about this is one way to get them to listen and to begin to work on this. So very clearly, someone can do something about it. And that's our call this morning.
And Walter, what sort of aid right now is getting into the region? What aid is being offered to the Sudanese people? And what are the main challenges? You sort of touched upon road blockades and the warring factions, but what are the big challenges in delivering aid to the region, and what exactly is getting there at this moment?
Access is a big challenge, and even though the current humanitarian appeal for the country is only 40% funded, even that 40% is still not able to get through because of the multiple checkpoints, the restrictions in accessing certain communities. So that has created a big problem for for the aid community that is trying to get aid to some of the most in need. Also, as I said, when you have infrastructure, clinics, and hospitals being targeted, that makes it harder for any services to be delivered to those people, especially for children and mothers who need the nutrition and the other health care. Now, when we talk about even not just the aid, it's also what people are able to produce moving around. We have a very vibrant local response community that is trying to help itself. The local kitchens are not even accessible themselves. They are being targeted. It's harder to get food moving. So that's a big ask from us that, let food move, let people get to the markets, let people provide for themselves as we continue to call. And then the missing 60% is another big ask, so that if what this has really meant is that if we had more than what the 40%, we could give more people food, but that missing also needs to be met, and that we can be able to prioritize this big starvation that is actually looming as we look forward to what the next few months spell for the communities.
Well, Walter, thank you so much for joining us today and for the important work that your organization is doing in Sudan. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
That is Walter Mwasaa, a regional director with the international aid organization CARE.